Hello, and welcome to the sixth video in my 10-part series on how organizations unwittingly burn out their employees. I'm Dr. Geri Puleo, the President and CEO of Change Management Solutions, and today we're going to be talking about how insufficient resources increase employee stress and lead to burnout. So what exactly is this thing that we call a resource? Many companies have difficulty finding the appropriate resource to help their employees do their jobs, but those employees are the ones who really feel this deficiency in their day-to-day tasks. So a resource is anything that the employer provides that supports and enhances the employee's ability to execute and implement the work that they've been assigned to do. As you may well know, I did significant research on the causes and maintenance factors of employee burnout during transformational organizational change. And this lack of overall resources was reported by 50% of my respondents. Now, one of my respondents gave a great analogy of what a resource is and how its lack can contribute to their non-performance of their duties. This participant said that a resource really is the ammunition that they need to get things done and to get things accomplished according to the standards that have been set out for them. So a resource is a type of ammunition. And as an employer, you wouldn't want to give your army blank bullets. You want to give them firepower. So by not providing the necessary resources to help your employees do what it is that you're asking them to do, really handcuffs them and limits their ability to do their jobs well. Now, being resource deprived not only impacts employee stress levels, but it also decreases efficiency, effectiveness, and employee engagement. So let's talk a little bit more about this connection between burnout and insufficient resources as one of its causes. Now, this diagram is the beginning of the BDOC, or Burned Out During Organizational Change model, which I went over in video 1. But just to do a quick recap, most employees approach their jobs initially with hope, but then based on organizational practices, that hope descends into feelings of frustration, anger, apathy, and eventually a full-blown burnout. So what are some of the organizational triggers that signify insufficient resources? Well, insufficient resources, that means, as I said, anything that does not support or enhance the employee's ability to do the job, leads to employees feeling that they're deprived or they're missing out on something that is not just something they want, but is in actuality something that they really need to do their work. And when this happens, they become initially frustrated, but as this deficiency continues over weeks, months, or even years, they begin to get angry. And when they get angry, this leads to their overall performance being less efficient and less effective. And if you have employees who are performing in a way that's inefficient and ineffective, you can pretty much bet your bottom dollar that they're also very apathetic or disengaged in their job. Now, when this happens to employees, this leads to a feeling of making do. Making do with what you've got becomes the standard in terms of how things are done here in the organization. It actually seeps into the organizational culture. And when this happens, neither the organization nor its employees can ever really achieve or realize their potential. And when this happens, this causes employees to feel victimized. Because think about it, if you don't have the appropriate resources that you need to do your job, when it comes time for your annual performance review, many times you're going to be judged on your performance, and it's not going to meet the standards that the organization's set for you. Now, if you're an employee, you're going to feel very victimized because you did the best, or you made do, with what it is that you had. And when you feel victimized, you're not going to be as enthusiastic about doing more in your job or for the organization. You become passive. And this loops back into an overall workforce that is unhappy, dissatisfied, and most importantly, underutilized. Workers are not going to put forth the additional effort if they don't feel that their best attempts to do their job cannot actually be met because you, as the employer, aren't providing them with the resources that they probably have repeatedly told you that they need to do their jobs. And what this results in for your organization is absolute mediocrity. The high achievers who want to do their best often leave when companies do not provide them with the resources that they need to do their jobs and to achieve the goals that the organization has set for them. The ones that remain are often apathetic, disengaged, or burned out. And when this characterizes your workforce, the only hopes that you have in terms of satisfying customers is with a mediocre product or service. So the question becomes, how do you decide? How do you decide which resources you should give to the employees? Should you provide them with greater technology? What if they need more people, that you need to hire more, either full-timers, part-timers, or seasonal workers? What if they need an overall better work environment? Or what if they need managers who are more knowledgeable and supportive? Well, to figure out uh, which resources you're going to provide to employees, the first thing you need to do is to consider the financial costs. But you have to remember that money is only one metric by which to measure performance. The ROI, or return on investment, is a lot more than what's on a financial statement. In fact, not all metrics are necessarily financial or tangible, something that you can see and touch. For example, how do you measure the level of employee enthusiasm in your work? What about your ability to meet employee expectations so that they don't feel that you don't care about them and they end up leaving? And how do you measure effort? Too many organizations tend to focus on face time. You know the employee who's there early in the morning and late at night, but what about their actual work product? Does it meet your standards? It probably doesn't if they're burned out. And then finally, how do you measure employee expertise? It's not just with the number of courses that they attend. It has to deal with competencies, which go way beyond just book learning. Book learning is critical to understand theoretical concepts, but you have to move into competencies in order to know how to apply those concepts in the real world. So employee morale and engagement become critical returns on investments that you need to consider when deciding where to spend corporate dollars on providing additional resources. Now, employee morale and engagement are critical. In fact, a lot of companies, think of startups in particular, that have highly engaged workforces tend to, well, do more. They tend to satisfy customers better. And as a result, they end up becoming much more profitable. But if your employees are disengaged, you're going to have higher turnover, and the ones who stay but are really ticked off because you're not supporting them will probably end up trying to sabotage the organization. And when you're trying to determine what resources to provide, whatever you do, don't give them one thing, but then take away something else that you had previously provided. According to my research on the causes and maintenance factors of burnout during organizational change, one participant said that their department had repeatedly requested corporate leadership to provide them with some additional manpower. Well, corporate did for 2 days, and then they were right back to where they were before. This did not increase levels of trust within that organization. They helped, but it was kind of a half-hearted attempt. And what ended up happening is that these employees didn't trust the corporate leaders anymore. So in order to determine what it is that employees need in order to do their jobs, ask them. Ask them what they need and then help them to prioritize a list. And just because they ask for something, that's not enough. You need to ask them a second question, which is, what are your ideas on how we can overcome this current limitation in resources? You'll be greatly surprised at the ideas and the commitment that employees will show when they're part of creating the solution to overcome a deficiency in resources. So the key takeaway here is that you need to remember that businesses need more than money to thrive. Businesses need engaged employees. So the first part of deciding which resources to provide to employees focused on the financial cost. But many times companies overlooked the human cost of not providing the resources that its employees are requesting. So the real cost of employee disengagement and burnout are often overlooked. But it has a lot to do with the maintenance of your workforce and the way in which they will be performing their duties, tasks, and responsibilities. Now, a recent study by Kronos found that 46% of the HR leaders that they surveyed said that burnout was responsible for, are you ready? Up to 50% of all the turnover in their organization. So turnover is a real financial cost to the organization. In addition, it's a cost to the employee morale within the workforce. If you want to calculate the financial cost of turnover, it's been stated that the cost to replace a salaried employee, that would be someone who is generally not eligible for overtime, is usually 6 to 9 months of that employee's salary. Now, think about that. That would mean that a $40,000 annual salary for an employee would cost the company between $20,000 and $30,000 to replace that employee. Now consider if that employee left because they felt that you just didn't provide them with adequate resources to do their job. So oftentimes they couldn't do what it was that you requested them to do within the time frame or in the manner in which you required it. So they leave. And when somebody leaves, it becomes very difficult for companies who have a reputation within their field or industry of not providing adequate resources to help their employees. It becomes extremely difficult for them to fill any open positions. Your goal as an employer should always be to create an environment that makes you an employer of choice, because employers of choice have their pick of the most qualified candidates that they can hire. Now let's think of something else when it comes to calculating the human cost associated with providing or not providing the resources that your employees say they need. And that's fatigue. And it's a fatigue that stems from resource deprivation. When you're asking employees to make do with what they have, that often means that they need to put more time in, they need to exert more effort, and they often don't achieve the results that you want without a great deal of extra time, effort, and energy expended on this. And in fact, it might take them a few hours to do something that, if you provided them with the appropriate resources, be it technology or another employee, they might be able to get done in an hour. And that type of fatigue and exhaustion can be a precipitating factor to burnout. Sleep deprivation is rampant in the United States, and stress-associated sleep problems continue to increase. So why would you not provide resources to an employee that could help them do their work better, faster, and more efficiently? Why would you not provide that with them? But too often, companies tend to look at the financial cost rather than the real human cost associated with it. And one thing you need to remember is that if you continuously say no to employees' requests to provide the resources that they need in order to do the job for which you hired them, that is going to create an environment that is characterized by a lack of organizational trust. The employees will believe that all you're concerned about are the financial metrics and the financial bottom line, and that you really don't care about them. A lack of resources, therefore, can be perceived by employees as a lack of organizational caring. And when employees believe that the organization doesn't care, turnover rates go up, engagement goes down, and burnout increases. So the key takeaway here is to remember that your employees are your only non-duplicatable competitive advantage. Anything else can be reverse engineered by your competition. So perhaps Henry Ford said it best. Don't find fault, find a remedy. If your employees are complaining that they don't have the tools and resources that they need to do their jobs and meet company expectations, go around, go over, go under, or even go through the obstacles that surround these missing resources. Remember, there's always a remedy.